Right, it is officially 11:30. Welcome to OneVoice Communications' very first webinar. We have a special guest today, Paul Wellons, owner, IT expert, AesirTech Consulting. Good morning, Paul. How are you, sir?
I'm well, sir. Thank you for having me on.
Absolutely. I truly appreciate you taking the time to meet with us today and to be able to take questions. Thank you for blocking off time on your busy schedule to be a part of this. I really appreciate it.
Glad to do it. Glad to always love helping.
So today, what we're going to talk a little bit about, everyone is working from home. Everyone, well, I wouldn't say everyone. The majority of people are working from home these days. A lot of businesses are telling people to telework. So we want to kind of touch base on challenges that people and businesses are seeing now that teleworking, because of COVID-19, now that all of that is happening, and how important it is to pay attention to those things. So there's a lot of things going on right now, from scams to emails that are coming to you. There are ways of just lots of things. You have to make sure that your systems are updated. We're going to get into all of that. We're also going to take your questions today. We'll be able to see any comments that you post on Facebook as long as you have a Facebook account. In order to post comments that I can see on YouTube, you need to have a YouTube channel, not just a YouTube account. So make sure that when you're commenting on YouTube, if you have a channel, feel free to comment. I will be able to see those. We can look at the comments later as well through YouTube if you don't have a channel. But we can also have questions sent to me via email. So if you want to send any questions to me, it's J, the letter J, B as in boy, ALSER at OneVoiceInc.com. So feel free to send me an email if you have any questions, or if you're watching on YouTube and you want to jump over and watch on Facebook so that you can comment, you can do that as well. Completely up to you. So, Paul, I'm going to go ahead and get started and kind of just go into a simple question. What have you been seeing, and are you busier now that more people are teleworking?
It comes in spurts, as IT work tends to, but overall it has been a very busy few months because so many people weren't already set up to work from home. Some of my clients were, some weren't, just depending upon how they generally worked beforehand. But now with the increase in self-isolation, self-quarantining, and working, basically everyone that can teleworking as much as possible to stay productive and employed, half the time they're using their home computers, which were, sometimes what I call bottom of the barrel. We bought it on sale for $200 3 years ago. It's not able to handle the workload that they need to perform their daily office, which is understandable. The home computers are usually not as beefy as you would buy in an office setting. You don't buy the $200 $2,000 machine at home typically, unless you're like a gamer or something like that and need a special rig. And people just didn't even have simple things like webcams and microphones. My mom, she's a teacher. I had to scrounge and find her one when they finally said, okay, we're going to start doing teleteaching for your students. Well, she didn't have a microphone and camera because she had a desktop that I got her a couple years ago. She never used it. She never needed that capability. Now she did, and there were none to be had on Amazon or anywhere. Fortunately, I managed to find one through a Dell vendor, but yeah, people just weren't prepared. I mean, it was a very abrupt change, and frankly, the infrastructure in people's homes couldn't hack it because why you spend all day on the really expensive computer work, you don't necessarily spend as much time at home. You're not doing the heavy lifting. You're checking your email and Facebook on an iPad or a tablet. You're not really doing a lot on the home computer typically.
Sure. I've also noticed that just computers themselves have been almost obsolete and hard to get.
Yeah, well, and there's multiple factors for that. Because of the influx of people that said, oh, my computer can't hack it, there's been a lot of people ordering computers because of that, because they do need the beefier machines. And with all the global nature of this issue, Shipping is messed up because there's extra procedures in place to get things into the country now. And that was on top of the trade wars that were already going on. And just sourcing parts is difficult. There's just not enough. There's excess use, kind of like with the toilet paper situation. It's not necessarily that people are hoarding it. It's that people are home using it at home and not at their place of business using the corporate toilet paper, which is a different manufacturer, different texture, et cetera, et cetera. It's just the different sources are being in use now, and they're not used to the increased volume. They haven't really even had to do sales on computers because people have just been moving them so quickly on their own because they need them now.
Absolutely, and excuse me, it can definitely be a problem. My computer got stepped on and by my 2-year-old, and I had to buy a replacement, and it took me a couple of weeks to try to find a replacement. Thankfully, I have a work computer that I do work from, and it's, like you say, a more expensive machine than I would normally buy for myself. And it was definitely great to be able to still have this, to be able to telework. So I can definitely see it being a challenge. And I just wanted to take a second real quick as well. We had a few more people join. Feel free to comment if you're on Facebook. We would love to have any questions that you might have for Paul. He is taking questions today. Anything that you can think of. If you're on YouTube, you do have to have a YouTube channel to comment. So you can also email me directly. So feel free to do that. And I'll say that periodically through this just so that we know that Paul is here to take your questions. All right, so Paul, what advice do you have for your everyday home user that's now working from home? What are you seeing out there that might trick them into things? Are there any scams that you're seeing, or what advice would you give someone right now?
So many scams going on right now. It's borderline ridiculous. I'm famous for saying the internet is an icky place on normal days. It's a cesspool right now, by comparison. In the past 3 days, I've had no less than 7 calls for the same type of scareware advertisement saying there's a security breach on your computer and there's a voice talking to them and call this number. And it literally all it is a browser pop-up from an infected ad. It doesn't actually put anything on the computer at first. A simple reboot clears it up and it's gone. But people don't necessarily know that. So they call the number and they let the person on saying, oh, we're tech support from Microsoft, quote, quote. And then once they're remoted in, they can do whatever they want to because you've given them administrative privileges to do things once they're in. That's the biggest one I'm seeing people fall for right now. I mean, there's the standard ones that are email attachments that people click on that look legit. That's a constant. But that first one, the one where it's really like literally talking to you, making all kinds of warning noises, it's terribly annoying. It's very common and prevalent right now, and people that don't know better are calling the number, and I'm getting so many calls for, this is what happened, what do I need to do now? Don't call the number. Just don't.
Yeah.
You get any pop-ups like that, call your IT person, even a box store, I don't care, just don't call that number. If a number pops up on an advertisement for something you're not looking for, it's a problem.
Absolutely, absolutely. Take some time now. We're a few minutes into this thing. Take some time now to kind of talk about everything that AesirTech covers, and kind of give a little bit about your background, so that people that are watching can get to know you a little bit more. So just take some time to brag about yourself for a second.
Well, I'm not terribly good at that, but I'll give it a shot. I was born at a young age. Obviously good at dad jokes. But basically, I was back in the late 90s, mid 90s, late 90s, when computers were first being able to be bought in the personal realm. My dad got a Franklin Ace 2000. I guess it was probably early 90s that he got that. So I've been around since the earliest floppy drives and home computers. And basically, I just was always the geek back when it wasn't cool to be the geek. Today everybody loves geeks because we're very popular and everything runs on what we can fix. But back then it wasn't. It was just kind of my calling. Dad was a tech for pagers, two-way radio, so it's natural technology bent in the family. Graduated high school, floundered around at Western for a couple of years. Got involved with EMS and was EMT, worked myself up to cardiac tech, basically trying to do anything except get pigeonholed as the geek. So I went into medicine, worked at the ER for a number of years as a nighttime medic, and then realized I missed daylight and people that weren't sick. Not that I didn't love the work and enjoy helping people, but I never saw my family, and it sucked because I worked the 7P, 7A shift. You work night shift, you work weekend shift, and you're the one that gets called in because there aren't that many spares on nights.
Yeah.
Great for the income, not so much for anything else, really. So I went back to school, got my official degree to say I was a geek, did my internship or externship, however you want to phrase it, got hired on there. It was a private school, just fresh out of college start, and then got fortunate enough to meet a fellow IT person that ran their own consulting business, got hooked up with them, worked there for many years, doing much the same thing I do now, just under their umbrella. And then, gradually, grew into starting my own business to focus on nonprofits and home users who and the smaller businesses that are kind of the fell between the cracks type places, big enough to need IT support, but not big enough to necessarily have their own internal staff that they pay on full-time basis, but need something more consistent than the rotation of people at a box store or a fly-by-night. I know a friend that did something with computers back in the 70s.
Right.
So I mean, basically, we're kind of your IT department in a box. I can help with things like websites. I don't really design them. That's what web designers do, but I can help you maintain it and all the back end stuff once it's built and placed. But mostly it's just, setting up your network, making sure you have email, making sure it's hosted correctly, backups, virus protection, malware scans, cleanups, just basically your day-to-day IT mechanic, sort of. We make sure we'll help. We're as involved or as little involved as you prefer personally, because everybody has a variable level of comfortableness with IT. We fill in the gaps. There are some places that have their own internal staff that are younger in field than I am, and they just call me as kind of a brain trust for advice once in a while. It runs the gamut. There's also like home users that'll say, "Hey, Paul, here's an email that I got. Forward it to me and say, is this a phishing scam?" I mean, it's just whatever.
That's a perfect segue, actually, and I'm glad you said that. We have our first question. How can I tell if an email is legitimate or is it a phishing scam?
That is actually a very, very good question. As they say, the devil's in the details. If you get something that says, "Oh, there's a OneDrive file," or something from Microsoft, what I always do, regardless of what the email is I check the sender email address, because even though it says, like, for instance, I send you one, Jay, and it says from Paul Wellons, Paul at AesirTech.com. Well, Aesir-Tech.com. Let's be specific. It's from me. But the front part, the Paul Wellons, the name can be changed and still say Paul Wellons, but it's attached to a different email address. Basically they spoofed my address. But if you're busy and aren't paying attention, you don't look at that actual email address attached to the name. You just see the name and say, "Oh, it's okay." So I always look at the address of the email that it's actually coming from. That's the easiest way to tell, because, for instance, if you get something from Microsoft that comes with .ru or .cz, that's Russia or Czechoslovakia. Microsoft does not send it from that; it sends it from Microsoft.com. They also don't make phone calls or typically email you first unless you A, owe them money, or B, have a trouble ticket. So they're not going to just randomly email you. Same thing with Google. There's a lot of very convincing Google, "Oh, your password is expired, please change it," or "There's an update to your Android device." Check the header. Don't click the links in the email. Even if you think it's legit, go to the website yourself and then log in. If it is a legit email warning, Gmail will pop up something and say, "Hey, you need to take care of this." I just, general practice, unless it's someone I know and I've confirmed, I don't click any links in an email just in case.
Yeah, my favorite ones are Amazon has been killing me with emails and text messages saying that our accounts are not right. I've gotten some stuff from Google.
Yeah.
It's almost like now that everyone's home, everything's increased.
Yeah. Well, and that's exactly what's happened is because typical day, it's a volume business. You go where the targets are. Most of the time, businesses are the ones targeted because that's where people are all day. I mean, that's the largest chunk of time where we spend, our day. But now that people are home, they are less, like psychologically speaking, they are less likely to be on cue, looking for this kind of stuff because they're at home versus being, at work. It's almost inbred. You have a different, like, for lack of a better word, paranoia at work about these things than you do at home. So when that happens, it's easier. You're an easier target is basically what it boils down to. So they flood the market with all of these, scarewares, the attempts at hacking, because statistically speaking, they will get more hits. They always get a certain number of hits, and the more they flood the marketplace because they have home users at home all the time, it's just they're going to have more success. It's annoying, but that's kind of the reality of it. I mean, the percentages are pretty solidly, set numbers almost that they have X amount of success rate, whether they send out this many or this many. So they're just making more money right now if they can.
So next question for you.
Okay.
My computer has started to go down recently. Is there anything simple I can do? What type of service do you offer out?
Oh, excellent question. There are some simple things you can do at home yourself. There's something called disk cleanup or clean disk, depending upon which variety of computer you have. It's usually under the start menu under accessories, or found under if you right-click on the hard drive itself or the computer itself, sorry, and click utilities after you click properties. But that having been said, I do have some monitoring software that does some maintenance as well that I can put on your computer to actually do routine maintenance for you. I do recommend that you have maintenance done on a routine basis, particularly if you're using your computer heavily. If you use it once a week, you probably don't need it like monthly. But like business users, that's kind of my bread and butter. What keeps my lights on is maintenance packages that I keep an eye on everything in the background, and it's also a lot easier to head off problems that are coming up that way. It increases the longevity of your computer in general, just keeping it clean and orderly. But typically the slowdown is an overabundance of temp files, such as from browsing the internet or opening and closing documents. Windows is a messy teenager. It doesn't clean up after itself real well. So sometimes you just got to go in and clean them manually. There are some various and sundry applications you can also get for free or purchase that I find very effective. CCleaner is one of them. It's very good and does a good job of automating the process without getting you in trouble. But it can also go deeper if you need it to, as far as registry cleaning and that sort of thing. If you are not comfortable with it, though, I would just let it do its automatic thing because it's designed to be simple to use for non-techies. That's the beauty of it. But it only gets you so clean. There are some things that I will always say you manually clean this directory structure. Like, for instance, Windows. There's a lot of temp files that can build up in your Windows directory, but I would not tell anybody to go in there that is not used to computers, because if you delete the wrong thing, your computer is crashed.
Sounds like a good time.
No, well, it's a good paycheck for me to fix it. That's literally how I make my living. But it's not a fun time for the users. I mean, that's my job, is to make you not realize I exist, yet keep everything running.
Exactly. So for businesses, is it important to increase their security now, to make everyone like a VPN, or what do you think would help keep them safe?
Well, increase is an interesting way to put it. It depends upon what they actually do in the first place, because security is a weighing of how secure you want to be versus how user-friendly and usable you want to be. That's literally the weighing action of it. I could lock down your computer so much that you could only run a single program, but that's not terribly effective if you have 12 programs you need to run. If you are doing telework, yes, if you have the capacity, a VPN is a good idea. That having been said, there's sometimes a lot of cost involved in getting that set up from scratch, particularly in a hurry. The higher end hardware that you would want to use is not stuff you can necessarily pick up, say, at Best Buy or Staples on the fly one Friday evening. It takes a little bit of planning.
Right.
You need to have things like a static IP address at one end of it. And that goes into, your service provider. If you have a business with a dynamic address, which means it changes when your modem reboots, it's a lot harder to set up a VPN. It's not impossible, but it's just it adds a level of complexity to the setup. It's not just something you're like, oh, I plugged in my VPN router, now it works. No. I wish it was that simple.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, security in general is just a good idea. I find that there's two type of people. There's the businesses that understand the need security and at least have attempted it, and then there's the ones that I don't care, and this is how it was set up originally. Their antivirus has been expired for 3 years. It came free with the computer. They thought it was good enough and never renewed it. I mean, it's usually the polar extremes. There's very few people in the middle that did an okay job but don't really need much work. It's either they're good and we can accelerate what they've done and fine tune it, and then there's the ones that just don't have any. So what you're talking about is probably somewhere in the middle is where we need to actually shoot, because again, I've seen people make it too paranoid so that they lost literally half their bandwidth from just their security stuff, and they were just overprotected. I mean, if such a thing is possible. If you run multiple antiviruses on your computer, they can fight with each other, for lack of a better way to put it. And again, firewalls, unless you know what you're doing, you could lock yourself out of the stuff you need to use. Somebody I knew installed some antivirus software that came with a firewall, and it stopped their Outlook from working.
That's not good at all.
Yeah, when you're a business and the way that they are a home inspector, appraiser rather, all of their stuff for jobs comes in through email. It's an automated process. So if they can't get to their email, they have no business. Much like a lot of us, email is a very vital communication tool. Imagine if your email was down for, half a day and you missed, 12 orders, at $300 an order. That's a huge chunk of change to miss just because you put too much antivirus or had it misconfigured in the first place on your computer. I mean, that's really poor ROI when you can have somebody like me come in and do it and have it done in half an hour and not worry. It's just kind of why I take my car to the mechanic. I don't want to deal with it, and I don't know what I'm doing anyway.
Exactly.
Oh. Nope, don't break it.
So, if you were, how should I word this and make it simple for you? If you were hired by a business, and not just business, because you work with businesses, nonprofits, students, personal, you cover a large amount of different, you're not just an IT guy for a business. Like if I needed your help with my personal computer and I wanted to sign up for a monthly service, I could sign up through you for protection. Yeah,
definitely. Yeah, that's part of what I envision for my company is literally filling that niche where people tend to not get taken care of, be it businesses, nonprofits, or the home users, private users. There's just that little hole right there, that I fill into because there was a need. Home users, a lot of people know a little bit about computers and enough to make themselves dangerous, and those tend to be the ones that I have to clean up on the home user side. Is, oh, my cousin, my brother, he set this all up for me, and now it's not working, and it's just a big old mess. Right. Not that I'm not discouraging people to troubleshoot and play. That's how I learned initially myself. But that's not what you need when you're a small business or a nonprofit. You need somebody that actually knows and has history doing it. And I've been doing this almost 2 decades now. So, and we all know I'm a workaholic, so it's actually been more like 25 years if you count all the actual hours spent. But yeah, I mean, I'll help anybody. It's
good.
There's a certain amount of triage involved. For instance, if you couldn't print one day, but then I had a client that had their accounting computer down, they would get priority because they got to get their invoices and billing out, and printing, unless you were printing something for a legal case that was going to trial in 20 minutes, You know, I mean, it's a certain level of triage. They're prioritization, and most people understand it and are good with it. You know, if your server was down, you would want me there immediately, not dealing with the person that just can't print for an hour. So I mean, there's weighing on it, and I try and be very fair about it.
And I'm sure people understand, and I'm sure there's also people that get upset, but that's just part of the business. They think printing off a picture that they took is more important than someone's server going down. But hey,
yeah. And for instance, the photographer that was selling that picture that they printed, yes, that would be rated higher than say me trying to print off whatever meme I just found.
Right.
You know.
You do that, don't you? You print off all your memes?
I will neither confirm nor deny that.
So
two walls.
Two walls. Got it. So when we've spoken before and you've given presentations previously that I've been able to attend, you've talked a lot about, for businesses, personal users, students, nonprofits, making sure their Windows operating system was updated, because in January a bunch of stuff's happened and things went obsolete. Can you kind of touch base on a little bit of that information for me?
Sure, yeah. What happened is in January we had what's called end of life cycle for Windows 7 and Server 2008. End of life cycle essentially means that Microsoft is no longer going to routinely put out security patches for those operating systems or programs. In this particular case, so many people ignored Windows 8 because it was just not a great operating system. It was a good attempt, but it didn't quite fulfill the bill. So, for instance, medical facilities did not upgrade to 8 because they wanted to keep with 7 because it was stable and everybody liked it. Great. But once it becomes end of life, it is no longer HIPAA compliant. So even it's considered an insecure operating system because it no longer gets updates. Therefore, everyone had to upgrade to 10, which is a current life cycle software operating system. And that was a big mess for everybody if they didn't realize that they needed to do it. On top of that, one thing that came out of it is QuickBooks themselves and a lot of accountants will not support people running Windows 7 that have their QuickBooks on Windows 7. So it's not quite as legal fees and user information issues as a hospital with HIPAA issues. But at the same time, if you have a problem with QuickBooks and they won't help you, that's kind of a big deal.
Right.
So what you can do, and I do try and save computers and upgrade computers if at all possible, but a lot of the older computers are simply too old to make it cost effective to upgrade to Windows 10, because Windows 10 runs best with at least 8 gig of RAM. You can run Windows 7 on 4 gig just fine. So you'd need at least to buy some more RAM. If you've had the computer for 5 or 6 years, though, the hard drive is reaching the end of its physical life potentially. So then you're upgrading RAM, paying $70 for RAM, and then the labor to install the Windows 10 operating system plus the cost of the operating system. So $200-300 right there to upgrade an older machine that's going to have a hard drive die in like a year or two. Not cost effective. Okay, so you say you replace the hard drive too. We'll just call it $100 for a decent hard drive of decent size. So we're up to $400. That's a pretty decent chunk towards a solid machine that's brand new with warranty. You can get a decent Optiplex, Dell Optiplex, which is their business line, for $700-800 if you catch it on time. I mean, obviously that's not the Cadillac version, but like the low end of their business professional line, for around $800. So you've paid for half of it, but you've still got an old 7-year-old computer that admittedly has a new hard drive and RAM in it, but it's still going to be not as fast as the new processors and the new motherboards. And so I mean, there's a lot of what I do is I weigh out the options of which works best for the person. I'm like, here's your options. This is what I would do. This is what you can do. What would you like to do? Because ultimately, I'm an advisor. I don't make people's decisions for them. Unless they tell me to make a decision and then run it past them. I'll do that and be like your CIO, your chief information officer. I'll be happy to do that for you, but I like to give people their options because that way they can be secure in what their decision is and why they made it, because they know all the factors in their life and their business. I don't, unless they tell me. I can only give you my best experience.
Right.
Which kind of got off topic a little bit, but the long and short of it is, operating systems do go out of life cycle, and there's various reasons. It's not just a scam to get you to buy new operating systems. The operating system's back end, the programming does change, because as one operating system saturates the market, hackers learn that one. They learn their flaws. They learn the potential types of flaws. So you got to change up the coding in the background to make it harder for the next operating system, and which is way above my pay grade. I don't know the programming stuff. That ship sailed a long time ago. I just fix things. I don't program operating systems. But you got to, it's just like, changing a house lock. You can get your basic quick set at Lowe's that everybody's seen, and half of the ones on the wall have the same key. Or you can get, a locksmith to put in a custom expensive one that, no one's ever seen. It's basically, you just got to change it up every once in a while so that people can't just walk into your house, except computers.
Computers.
Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Did I over-explain? Sorry.
No, I completely understand.
It's a rabbit hole I can go down for hours.
Oh yeah, I'm sure. It's kind of. It's scary to see how easily people can get into your systems.
Mm-hmm.
I'll give a quick example. I'm gonna go off tangent on a small little tangent for a second, not long, but everything is connected nowadays. Everybody talks about the Internet of Things.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone talks about they want their homes to be smart. Everything is connected. Smart TVs, phones, computers, your AC units. Some people just have smart homes altogether.
Don't forget, you can get smart litter boxes now too.
You can, yeah. Vacuum cleaners, your security system. Everything. Refrigerators, the whole works.
Mm.
So, for example, I had a TV that broke. I didn't tell the guy that I was on the phone with Samsung my Wi-Fi password. I didn't tell it to him. I literally gave him the model number and information off of my television, and he said, well, I'm going to check to see if it needs to be updated. And I said, well, how are you going to do that? And before I knew it, he was on my TV doing stuff. I could see a mouse moving around and going in, and it's scary. It's scary for how simple it is that companies that make these products can get into their software just like that.
Yeah. And I'm sure that was a legit backdoor that they put in it for just such a purpose. But if it's there, it can potentially be exploited.
Yeah. And I thought, I'm secure. I use my local provider. I have passwords. It might be getting to the point where I have to buy a firewall for my house.
I know a guy.
But, it could be that point, someday. But it's really easy for people to get taken advantage of, and that's why they need someone like you, if they don't have anything, to help protect them, because everything can be taken from you these days.
Yeah. I like to joke that I'm professionally paranoid.
Yeah.
I'm paranoid for you. I'm like your Jiminy Cricket of paranoia.
I like that.
Going back to what you said about, it being so easy to get into stuff, the biggest thing that I could recommend to anyone is just make yourself not a good target. That's really what the whole goal of security and maintenance and stuff is, to make yourself a more annoying to get to than you're worth. For instance, like, you say, who would you bother in the grocery store? The 7 foot tall dude that walks around with a big frown on his face, bulging muscles, or the little wimpy guy that is just standing, like me. Would you pick on the 7 foot guy or me? Pasty white guy in glasses. I'm a much better target if you're trying to rob me, on some dark alley, than the tall 7 foot brute that plays basketball and could bench press me. Just make yourself not a very attractive target to hackers. Ways you do that: good passwords. Change your passwords. Don't use the same passwords on multiple websites and programs. I know it's annoying, but there's software that can keep track of all that that's encrypted for you. I use one myself. It's great because I know I have to use so many passwords with all my clients and my own stuff. I can't keep track of them all. It would be a Herculean task.
Right.
So make yourself a non-viable target. I mean, that's really the biggest advice I can give anybody. That, you know, I mean, obviously having an IT person that you can know and trust is as a friend put it, I look for 4 people when I move to a new state: my hairdresser, my mechanic, my doctor, and my IT person. Because those are 4 people that you have to have implicit trust in for factors of your life. If you can't trust your mechanic, your car's going to fall apart. Can't trust your hairdresser, well, you see what happens when I do my own hair. Doctor, that one's a no-brainer. If your doctor keeps you alive, and your IT person keeps your business or your home life alive. That's just the nature of the life we live these days.
Absolutely. We do have a comment that came in. I just want to say, Jay Tucker, thank you for watching. He said, looking good, fellas. Lots of good information from Paul as always. So he's always got our back. So thank you, Jay, for leaving that comment. We do have another question that came in.
Oh, good.
Do you think that COVID-19 will change the IT industry? If yes, how and why?
I think to an extent it may, but at the same time, like for instance, taking myself as an example, I have been more likely to do remote sessions to help someone than to just jump in the car and run and see them. I mean, I have all the protective gear I need to go see them, of course, but just helping prevent the spread and that sort of thing. I've been more likely, you know, simple fixes that I could fix quicker in person, I have taken the time to do remotely, just for their protection and safety and you know, peace of mind and my own. But I was already set up to do remote work like that anyway. For instance, my home office is in Roanoke, but I have clients as far away as Radford. You know, if they're having an emergency and I can still get to the computer on the internet, it's much faster for me to just remote and fix it. You know, again, for instance, a printing issue. There's something stuck in the print queue. Remote in, reset the queue, 5 minutes work. Or drive 45 minutes for 5 minutes work, and they're down for 45 minutes. So to some extent, the IT industry has not changed a lot, at least as far as I'm concerned. Home visits are a little bit more formal than they used to be. You know, it used to be, oh, hey, how you doing, miss, blah, 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 you know, and, you know, at the end of it, I would fix them, and they would hand me, like, baked goods and things like that. So, you know, the little perks like that are not so much anymore. But as far as, you know, home visits, it's more structured, you know, with all the safety that we need to do, because a lot of my home users are the aged population or ones that are more susceptible. So I want to be particularly careful around them, because I would feel horrible if I took anything to them and something happened. Again, going back to being a medic, though, I've washed my hands the right way for about 30 years now. So there's that. But yeah, I think to some extent it will change the IT industry. It's going to be a little bit more remote, even though the trend was trending back towards people wanted more in-person visits. But right now, nobody really wants in-person visits unless it's unavoidable. And there are certain cases that are unavoidable in IT. So it's changed, but not as much as people might think it would.
I think too, you mentioned earlier that a lot of your clientele is the older generation, or the ones that are more prone to catching the disease. And I think it's important for people to realize that a lot of the problems and a lot of the ones that think they can't have any problems or untouched are the younger ones. I feel like they are the ones that need the most security. Now, they are more aware that they do need the security, and they are getting it more than likely. But I still feel like there's a bunch out there that are just like, oh, it's fine. It's no big deal. Nothing will happen to me. And I think they need to be aware. It's an issue.
Yeah, agreed. And I mean, psychologically speaking, it could be that whole sense of immortality that we all had when we were younger. Until you have your first like major medical issue, you think you're immortal. And it could be just an outgrowth of that. They've also been, as they say, born with, a smartphone in their hands, which is great for knowing how the technology works, but familiarity does breed a bit of contempt. You might think nothing's ever happened to me, so nothing's going to.
Right.
Because everything I've been doing is okay, and it merely could be happenstance that you just haven't gotten hit yet, and then you will, and the tune will change. But it's better to be prepared for that. Do your backups. Have your antivirus. Be a bad target.
Definitely do your backups on everything.
Mm-hmm.
Everything. Your wireless devices, your computers.
And make it as automatic as possible, because you will forget to change a hard drive, and then you will lose data.
Yeah. Do you recommend external hard drives?
It varies from place to place and scenario to scenario. I back up some things to jump drive. I like my most important things to a jump drive, updated fairly frequently, and then take it to a fireproof box. Some things I back up to just, like my MP3 collection, I back it up to an external hard drive. It's not the end of the world if it gets lost. I wouldn't enjoy it, but it wouldn't be the end of the world. But the things that are like, wills, important legal documents, scans of my mortgage documents, etc., things that are truly legally vitally important, go on that jump drive, and they go in a fireproof safe. And when I had one, I would take it out to the bank vault and put it in a safety deposit box. Because just because you have a fireproof safe at your house doesn't mean the things in it can't melt. If it gets hot enough, it just means that the safe won't. But it's a giant piece of metal that turns into an oven in a fire. So have multiple backups in multiple locations. The easiest way to do that is a cloud backup that's automated, which conveniently enough, I do have one of those a service that I use that integrates with all my ticketing and my monitoring and all that fun stuff. But, put some of the documents in that. A lot of them are encrypted to the point where even the vendors can't see your data in their cloud solution. Like, if you lose your key and your password, it's gone. It's just, you have to start from scratch. So make it a password you can remember, obviously, or use one of those password managers. But yeah, a cloud, I have, most of my business documents are backed up both to hard drive and cloud at this point, just because I'm paranoid. And I use things like Microsoft SharePoint and Dropbox that sync automatically for the more day-to-day stuff that I want to have offsite. So it varies from person to person and business to business, but there are multi-stage backup solutions that work in most cases. It just depends upon how quick and how easy you need to restore as to what we need to actually put in place. But yeah, definitely do backups and have one offsite, however you want to do that.
We had another question come in through my email.
Oh, cool.
Do you recommend any software or even self-practices to help free up bandwidth during the day? I work from home, my husband works from home, and now both kids are learning from home. I can't stream while I'm doing everything. They actually said I can't stream my soaps. So, but do you recommend any software or even self-practices to help me free up bandwidth during the day?
Well, I mean, the biggest practices you can do is, one thing I would see is how old is your actual wireless router? It could simply be that you need to replace that, because those age out just like every other piece of technology. The technology on wireless, on Wi-Fi advances by leaps and bounds. The same router that you bought 2 years ago, there would be different protocols now that would be much faster and much better programming. That having been said, that would be where I would start, because that's the less expensive long-term solution. Buy a new router, and I'll be more than happy to give examples and speak about specifics, because not every router is created equal, not every house is the same, different coverage areas, that sort of thing. But more than that is, what I'm finding is that overall businesses and home users simply don't have the actual core bandwidth to handle what they're doing now at home. At home, after work, 2 people are streaming a movie and 1 person's checking Facebook. Great, you've got the bandwidth for that in spades. At night. But now everybody's at home using the residential pipe, and it's kind of like the traditional garden hose example that has pin pricks in it. There's no pressure at the end, which is, if you guys have seen anything about it, a lot of places are talking about the need for fiber and high-speed internet in more rural areas. But even in our, metropolitan areas or semi-metropolitan areas, like Roanoke has decent bandwidth. But, places like Christiansburg and Blacksburg, the infrastructure isn't necessarily everywhere it needs to be, where it needs to be. If you're on Tech's campus, sure, but they paid to put in fiber all over the campus. You go off of campus, it's not as fast necessarily, unless you get one of a couple providers. OneVoice is great with putting in the fiber, and you guys have great service for the clients that I've got on it. But us run-of-the-mill people at home can't use yours because you do business internet.
Right.
I have Cox at home. I pay for 300 megabits down. And fortunately, I got it as an introductory price. But, that was conservatively 50 times faster than what I had before. So it's a lot faster now. But not everybody wants to pay for that tier. They'll get like the 50 down and then like the 5 up. Well, with everybody at home remoting out, you're using the up now to talk to the computers at work. The up is what's killing it. Because everything you download has to send something back up to say, oh, I got it. The little data packets. And this is deep dive. I mean, this is just how computers work. Packet, sent, received, send the next one, back and forth. Well, if you've got 4 different people remoting out using the upload to connect to a remote computer or to stream a movie or whatever, that upload is now your bottleneck. It's not the big 50 that you're paying for download, which is what streams the movie most of the time. It's the upload that 5 is getting tapped out or redlined, to put it in a computer term or a car term, and you're hitting the wall there.
Right.
The downside is most places don't offer synchronous, 50 up, 50 down, unless it's, like a fiber or a really expensive circuit. That's the reason I went for the 300 down, is because it comes with 30 up, so that I can do my remote work and not get bottlenecked. Admittedly, I'm running an IT business out of my house. You probably don't need 30 up, but 2025 for 4 users all day, I could see it.
Absolutely.
Again, deep dive on that. Sorry, that may have been a little bit more verbal vomit than you wanted on the topic, but I would start with the router, see how old it is first, and then and even the modem, because Cox modems, Chantel modems, if it's older, it might need to be replacing too, because they upgrade their back end but don't necessarily send modems to everyone once they do that. There used to be what's called DOCSIS 3. Now most places are on DOCSIS 3.1, but you may still have a DOCSIS 3 modem. So that little difference can affect your bandwidth coming in before it even gets to the router. So modem, router, those are the first 2 least expensive things to look at. And then I would look at actually increasing your subscription price for better upload and download.
And if that sounds like it to anyone else,
sorry,
it's okay.
I'm usually pretty good at the geek to normal person translation, but that one, it's kind of hard to do.
Right. So that's a reason for you to call Paul, as if it sounds like a different language, then you better call Paul. See what I did there?
Yes, I've heard that a couple times before.
Yeah. I've also wanted to touch base too. A lot of people don't realize that it can be the other equipment in your business or your home. You briefly touched base on that, like saying, look at your modem, look at your router. But people don't understand that how important that is. People don't understand that if you just get a router supplied by someone, that might not be the best for your business.
Correct.
It might not be the best for your home. It might be worth the investment to go out and do some research or call you and say, hey, this is what I'm working with. Is there something that I should be using better? This is what I'm going to be doing with this. Really having you there to explain the difference, and not just like everybody else does, look at YouTube videos, and try to fix everything, and actually have an expert that can come in and appropriately diagnose your situation is the best way for me to put it.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I like doing. Is I like giving the advice as much as I like fixing and seeing the final product and the smiles of, oh, it's so much faster. I like the diagnostic portion of it. I like just the helping. Fire off questions. I mean, I might not necessarily respond to a random question very quickly if I'm out running around fixing all the, people that did fall for the virus issue. But I like giving advice. I mean, you don't know what you don't know, and if you don't know it, ask someone that does. And that's just, we're all one big community. I mean, admittedly, this is how I make a living, but I like helping.
Exactly.
Exactly. And it's like, buy the right shoe. You don't want to buy a shoe that's 3 foot, too wide, because then you'll get blisters or it won't fit. It's networks as similar and as much as computers and networks all look the same, they are very different when you get down to it. They can be extremely different. Same principles, but different ways of doing things and different levels of quality. A decent small business router that you can't get at a box store might be a little bit more expensive, but might work far better and give you far more security options than, say, your standard Netgear off the shelf.
Sure.
And even, home users, I've got some home users that are using the lower end corporate gear because it's just faster. The Ubiquitys that I use in most places, I've seen an increase of up to, I mean, it's not guaranteed, obviously, but I've seen it actually increase just the base bandwidth usage by 25% at one particular place, because their other equipment was so old and was of so poor quality that this new stuff literally made them 25% faster on the internet, just putting it in. Again, that's more of the higher end of the spectrum of what I see, but usually I see a little bit of a boost at least. I'd spend the extra $100 to get a little more juice out of my internet.
Absolutely. So you spoke briefly about uploads, and that's so important these days. And more people need to understand that it used to be all about the download.
Mm-hmm.
That's all people focused on. That's all people cared about, is I need to download this, I need to download that. But now that everything's moving to the cloud, now that more and more people are teleworking, it's not only important for personal users to have good upload speeds, but businesses as well, in order to communicate with those teleworkers.
Agreed.
Do you see it now or in the future being more important, or more prominent, I guess, and seeing more businesses switch to a synchronous fiber type situation, or do you think that it'll still be the broadband? Because in my opinion, this could make employers telework more over a long period of time. I really think COVID-19 is going to make working from home and teleworking a new standard, if you will.
Right. Well, I mean, people are realizing the quality of life improvement by, let me get my stuff done, and then the rest of my time is my own. That's kind of how I've always run my business. I get my work done, and then I can play. If it's 4 hours, great. I'll take a nap in the afternoon because I can.
Right.
Doesn't happen often because, again, kind of high demand right now. But it's a nice dream, But everyone is realizing that that's an option now.
Right.
Sorry if I blinked. My computer screens went to sleep. But yeah, I think synchronous is definitely the way to go. I don't know how long it will be until it is adapted, because the cable companies could do it now. It's just they're not set up to want to do it because they make more money by having us get the higher package to get the higher upload. It's not necessarily all gimmick, but it's certainly, personally, I think, part of the gimmick. I would love to have everybody on fiber because fiber is solid. You can't get faster transmission speeds than fiber. It's synchronous. You don't run out of speed. You need more speed. You just say, okay, give me more speed. Again, tiered based on what we need to cover our costs on the back end, but essentially limitless up until the actual literal physical caps on the data transmission. I'd love to see it improve. I'd love to see teleworkers more often, but until the upload speeds are good on both ends, I don't see it happening. And that's
right.
The problem. That's almost an industry shift that needs to happen in the bulk of the industry. I'd love to see it happen. Don't know if it will. I'm not a lobbyist. I don't have enough voice to make it happen. I'll argue in favor of it any day of the week, though. Because even things like for instance, some of my nonprofits or don't have, they don't have budget to get the really expensive packages for internet. How are they going to do cloud-based stuff? Like, for instance, move to Office 365. If all of their computers are sharing, 6 down, 10 down, and like 3 or 4 up, you've got 5 or 6 employees in a nonprofit. It's not an exact number, but basically you're getting what, 0.75 up each? I mean, mathematically speaking, I mean, it works out a little different in reality, but that's basically what you're saying is divide both of those numbers by 6, and that's your allotment for your computer. So, 1.25 down and 0.75 up per computer. Do you remember dial-up?
Right. That's what I was getting ready to say. It's dial-up.
It's not that much better than that. So, if they would, it's all about the cost. Last mile needs to be improved. The actual infrastructure needs to be improved in many places. And companies roll the cost into that. So if we pay more now, they may improve the infrastructure. I would like to think they would. They might just take it as stock options and pad their own pockets. But, the need is there. We just got to get someone that's willing to pay for it. Because once it's there, everyone will jump on board once they see the need. And with the teleworking going on now, okay, say they call me in. Okay, we've replaced your router, we've replaced your modem. This is as fast as your internet's going to get, even with my brand new computer attached to it, which, like, I'll bring in mine and test it. And because I keep mine, as you might imagine, quite clean and as zippy as possible. If it's still slow after we replaced all that stuff, it's not your house or business. It's them. It's a process of elimination. And once I've got in and done my work, I can't swear I'm not perfect. I'm human, but there's a lot of it's them out there, and
Absolutely.
People just don't realize it.
So we have just a few more minutes left, about 3.5 minutes or so. I wanted to touch base real quick and say, not only do you do the security, the IT, the remoting in, fixing things, but you can also do repairs too, correct?
Oh yeah. No, I certainly do repairs on computers, new hard drives, that kind of stuff. Some things, again, I give people the options because some things are simply not worth fixing. If you've got a laptop, like for instance your laptop, if it's cracked and the screen's going to cost $150, and then plus my labor to install it, which guess about an hour, at what point does it become more cost effective to get a new laptop?
Or $450, what mine was, just for the screen.
Yeah, so I mean, just for the screen. I had someone yesterday that emailed me about a laptop that got spiked and wasn't recognizing the charger anymore. It was still functionally working, it just wasn't recognizing the charger. New motherboard's $250. They paid $400 for the laptop in the first place. Okay, let's buy a new laptop because you get warranty, and the $250 you were going to buy the motherboard with to replace, again, not talking about labor at all, is literally more than half the cost of what the laptop was in the first place. Why do that? Buy something new with a warranty for the $400 again, and so on and so on.
Right.
But yeah, I will fix stuff. I mean, sometimes I have to say it's not fixable, but I will fix things. And data recovery, I can do that. And if I can't do it, I know a clean room I can send it to. If there's something I do, I can find or have someone that will do it.
That's great. That's great.
That's part of the whole IT coordination thing.
With the last minute, tell people the best way to get a hold of you if they have any questions, any concerns, if they just want to learn more about what you do and how you can help them. Take the last minute and just kind of talk about that.
Okay, well, there's a couple different ways to get a hold of me. Recently, we got a new domain to make it easier to find us because our original domain name has a hyphen and it's just kind of a pain to spell. So you can use Gotech.support. And again, that's Gotech, .support. No .com, just literally all that. And that will forward you to our actual website where you can fill out a form, get our phone numbers, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You can also call us at 540-519-2468. And again, since I'm often on the road, you might get the voicemail. Leave a voicemail. It's emailed to me, and whenever I check my email, I can then get your voicemail. It also forwards to the office manager, so if I can't get to it quick enough, I can have her call you. And then, of course, you can just email support at AESIR-TECH.com. And you can look us up on Facebook and various other places too. So.
Well, Paul, thank you so much for today, for your time, for taking time to answer people's questions, for giving us feedback, for giving us guidance. We're in a definitely challenging time, a new time. And for some, it's almost like a new adventure trying to figure out how to work in today's world.
Agreed.
And you're there to help them. You're there to guide them along if they need help. And thank you so much for being a part of this today and for being our first guest. We really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you for having me. It was a lot of fun. We should do it again sometime.
Absolutely, anytime. All right, everybody. I am John Balser, or Jay Balser, with OneVoice Communications. If you ever need help with your upload, as we talked about earlier, give me a call. We'll definitely be able to help you out. But thanks again for everyone for joining and for putting in questions. We really appreciate it, and I hope everyone has a great rest of your week. Thanks a lot, guys.
Have a good day.
Bye, everybody.